Good morning. Welcome to another edition of the Northland Sports Page. It's Brian Prudhomme. It's Dave Cook. It is Saturday. It is shaping up to look like a good one weather-wise. Should be a decent weekend overall. Dave Cook, I'm going to start with you in this sense. Speaking of good weather, How nice is it to see college baseball, high school baseball played mostly as scheduled because Mother Nature, for the most part, outside of the end of March for practices, has cooperated?
Yeah, how about 2 weekends in a row, by the way?
Yeah.
So we got Scholastica played last week and had a pretty nice little weekend, although I did tell you that the second game that they played is one of the it was windy.
I was going to say, what
right?
you told me basically was Chicago was not the windy city last Saturday by game 2 for you.
No, my gosh.
It was Duluth.
It was like the opposing team had never seen wind before. Like there was a double in front of the mound. Like dunk, dunk,
Wait, do that again?
Yeah. Well, no, I was being the wind. But
did you play the wind in a school play at some point? Because that was pretty professional.
That was pretty good.
For those of you who missed it, it was go ahead.
Oh, so yeah, and so you're like the magpie. You just mimicked me almost perfectly.
Yes.
But today they play Gustavus, and it ain't going to be any wind. It's going to be beautiful out. It's supposed to be pushing 60. Now where I sit, it's going to be pushing 30. Back behind home plate there. But if you're in the sun, today's going to be a perfect day to go to Wade and watch a little Division III baseball. Watch some local kids go, and Scholastica's coming around. They look okay.
Absolutely. And I joked with my wife as you pulled up to my house today to pick me up to bring me to the studio because I said, oh yeah, here's a brief reminder that Dave has Saints baseball today because it is pretty nice out right now. Now it'll get much warmer than it is at the current moment at 10:03 here on the Fan. But when you pulled up, I'm not wearing a jacket today. I'm trying to will it to be nice out. I have, kind of a makeshift light sweatshirt on and that's it. But when you pulled up and you were sitting in the driver's side, obviously you were very winterized. And I went, oh, yeah, up at the top of Wade, it's just a different world.
And that wasn't even the coat I'm going to wear. Like, that's in case it's not as bad as I think. But I have my hockey coat, the coat that Jessica gave me in the back of the car because that's what I'm wearing. And that's good for minus whatever. But it's humid and cold back in that area of Wade. And you're going to sit there for a doubleheader. You got to be prepared.
So that'll be happening today. First pitch of game 1, I believe, is 1 o'clock at Wade. The Gusties of Gustavus against the Saints Scholastica Saints. No weather delays, we don't think, but as Dave said, he's got to be ready for all seasons when it comes to his apparel. Northland Sports Page, we try to be ready for all seasons when it comes to talking sports. We are only ready for anything thanks to our great sponsors.
Absolutely, Brian. Let's start with Kraus Heating and Cooling, your Carrier HVAC authorized dealer. Mike Regan at Christensen Group Insurance, the Blackwoods Group, including London Road, Blackwater, Tavern on the Hill, Proctor, and Two Harbors. But before we go too much further, Brian, both of us spent money yesterday at Tavern on the Hill.
Right. We missed a golden opportunity to do it together. You were in person, on site, if you will, and I took advantage of the great delivery rates again.
I'll tell you what, the waiter we had last night was impeccable. So, with the eating thing that I have, the celiac disease, when I go into a restaurant, I have to be very clear what it is I'm looking for.
So you have a deep conversation.
And he says, oh yeah, I've done this before. We've got an area set aside. We'll take care of this. No worries. And for the first time in a long time, I just kind of sat back because he was so confident and convincing. And of course, we didn't have anything to worry about all night because he was attentive. But you don't get wait staff like that everywhere. And so I was just thoroughly impressed. So I just wanted to add that in there.
Right. Tavern does a terrific job. Now, my question is, had he truly done that before, or is there a picture of you in Tavern like there used to be do not accept checks from this man? Well, it was, here's what you can serve this man.
Pre me going to where I work now, I think there was a button at the Duluth Grill that said, just click here for Dave.
Nice.
Well, I told you the story about going for a business meeting there, and the waitress took everybody else's order, and the guy said, aren't you going to have something? And she goes, he's here all the time.
I need a button like that because most people think that we show up together everywhere, so I need a button. Wherever I go, just click here for Dave. On this show, sometimes I serve as Dave's interpreter, but I promise you I didn't steal any money from him. Go ahead.
Right, 100%.
There's my Shohei joke for the day.
Mall Royal Bottle Shop, Stewart's Bike Sports and Trophies, Comfort Systems of Duluth, Kohler Toyota and Kohler Hyundai, Advantage Emblem and Screen Printing, Hoops Brewing, and Arola Architecture Studio.
So very grateful for each of those sponsors. They make our Saturdays fun. We try to kick your weekend off the best way that we can. happy Masters weekend to those who celebrate. And I say to those who celebrate because that does not necessarily include you or me.
Right. I mean, I'm really happy that golf has its thing. Like, I'm never going to say you should stop that, but
Right.
it's anticlimactic to me. I just don't care enough about golf.
4,000%. But I think some of the casuals probably do, thanks to Tiger Woods making another cut. It's just good for the game itself. It's a little bit like Caitlin Clark obviously drew people to women's basketball. We'll talk about that a little bit later. We spent the bulk of the show last week talking about that. But I said what I said about doesn't matter. South Carolina's going to win it anyway, and they did. But it's amazing to me how one particular athlete can draw people in. And Tiger's done that for a long, long time.
Well, that was going to be my point. Did you see him on TV at all yesterday? Man, he is. Like, I remember when he started, which if he looks really old, I got to stop looking in the mirror, right?
Right.
But it was
I don't have any for good reason.
It was something to see him out there, balding and gray and thinking, wow, Tiger Woods when we were younger was the guy. And now he just looks like grandpa.
Well, and it's interesting to see how the media will cover this because he is probably no longer the guy. The statistics, the age, whatever, speak for itself in that sense. But a pet peeve of mine, the little bit that I'll watch golf, and I'll tell you what, the little bit is just because I have a sports media role and I don't want to be completely lost. But it really got to me when, he might be tied for 20-something. And we're not seeing the leaders at all because we're concerned with what Tiger's doing. I get marketability, but it used to drive me nuts.
Well, we've seen that, and I don't know if you're old enough to remember, but I remember Dad watching golf and talking about how good this Jack Nicholson used to be.
Well, he's a good actor, but Jack Nicklaus is a good golfer.
That yes. One. And then Arnold Palmer would come for his ceremonial first swing, right? And he was like, "Oh boy, this guy." And well, now we're kind of like that with Tiger Woods, right?
Well, it's because in general we've become get off my lawn guys without question.
That's true.
But it is interesting what the media chooses to run with because we talked about South Carolina beating Iowa. And South Carolina was a tremendous team, and I'd followed the sport long enough where I mentioned it for a while. But for those that were obsessed with Iowa and Caitlin Clark, they didn't want to hear that. And Iowa got beat. But people still walk away from that tournament, that championship, talking about Caitlin Clark. The WNBA draft is right around the corner, and we'll be talking about her again. It's just amazing to me. And I think of it in my own family with my niece being on Minnesota Dance. Now, they won a natty this year, but they also got second in another category at Nationals. But that routine that got second was the one that was all over national TV. It's interesting how this is so Minnesota, but it doesn't pertain to us. Because I was about to say, you don't have to win to be noticed, but the reason Minnesota pro sports aren't noticed is because we don't win.
We don't win, right. It's going to be real interesting. Clark in college, where she was the best player on the court at all times. Well, I shouldn't say that. There's been times, but she's always been the best shooter.
Right.
She's going to go to the WNBA.
She's the must-see TV.
We're going to be really interesting to see when somebody who's 6 foot tall and can guard like crazy is in her face the whole time.
Well, and I want to see what not having carte blanche is going to look like because the Iowa players in general were good, but they aren't as good as the roster in the WNBA that she will be part of. I can't imagine, other than for selling tickets, she's going to have carte blanche to cross over half court and just bomb.
Well, and the point guard from LSU, she basically retired from the game after Clark beat her. She's going to go transfer to Old Dominion or someplace. That person doesn't exist in the WNBA. Like, she's going to cross half court and she's going to have somebody 6 foot tall nose to nose with her, right? She's still good enough to get shots off, but she's not good. I will be shocked, and I hope I'm wrong. I will be shocked if she becomes that person in the NBA because or WNBA because there are people that can go face up on her an entire game.
Right. But I think it's very careful to add that you're not doing that as a naysayer. I think you're just curious because Diana Taurasi, who I enjoyed, but also sometimes I rolled because the person who enjoys Diana Taurasi the most, in my opinion, is Diana Taurasi. But she kind of went after Caitlin Clark that reality's coming.
Yeah.
But when you listen to the context in which she said it, she could be right. But the media took off with, well, the WNBA legends don't even want this girl, and you're not going to grow the game that way. I disagreed with that.
Yeah, I do too. There's going to be players in this league who are as talented, just not in the right situation, and didn't play in a time when the 3-point shot was, glamorized as the way to score and wasn't the only animal on a team, right? But are going to say to themselves, I'm going to show her.
Right.
And some of them are going to be able to show her. And what will be interesting isn't necessarily year one, because I think that is going to be tough on her. But year 2 and 3 when she starts to figure it out, it's not like she's a dumb basketball player. She's going to be
Not even close.
She's going to be good. It's just going to be different to watch when people are guarding her face up, not worried about her scoring 40.
Right. And again, what I like, and again, this was the bulk of 2 hours last week, was women's basketball as a topic. And I just hope it doesn't go away, especially at the NCAA level, because Caitlin Clark isn't part of it.
I hope you're right, because I can say it's going to be interesting watching her go to the WNBA. It was fascinating watching her in college, right? And then she brought the game up. What is it? The high tide raises all boats, and I think that's kind of.
But I just want to make sure that the NCAA doesn't disappear because she did when it comes to women's basketball.
I just don't think it will.
I don't either, but I'm just concerned about it. Just like I'm concerned when Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift, either Travis calls it a career, and so they're not at games anymore, or heaven forbid they break up. Are all these casuals that we brought into the sport going to go away and we're going to go, you never liked the sport, you like this person and this person?
Well, I think that's true in every sport, though I would guess there were some fans of Babe Ruth that quit watching baseball when he retired, right? But
because they went to watch No Nanette, right? Wasn't that the trade?
Very nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Look at that.
But the thing about Taylor Swift is she needs another album, so they do kind of need to break up. But those songs will be really interesting, right? So one of them will be called 4th and 1. Maybe there'll be the Mahomes shuffle.
Right. Instead of feeling 22, she's going to be feeling 4th and 2 at some point.
Exactly. So she needs material, man.
I think our main point is some of these sports that have been so at the forefront of people's minds need to stay there. I don't want it to just have a weekend.
Correct.
Now, we started a second ago talking about Happy Masters Weekend to those who celebrate. The Masters is a big deal to basically everybody but us, it seems like, in the world of sports. But that is just a weekend. So even we, not being the biggest fans of it, can find a way to discuss it on the show. And we're going to with an interesting, very unique opening topic today that I'm concerned about, but also excited about, because I just hope we pull it off the right way. Because I thought of this and I ran circles around myself going, does this make sense or not?
Well, and that sometimes makes for fun conversation, right? So you guys are going to have to play along with us today because this one is a little all over the place. Brian, so when you're watching golf, what are the things that they continually to show you highlights of?
Right, and I'm glad you said highlights because when you said, Brian, when you're watching golf, I went, I don't. But
when you tune to the
golf
channel,
I do see the highlight. Yeah, that's because I like to go to Ridgeview and they won't change the channel no matter how many times I ask. I remember one time I got to Ridgeview to watch a Frozen 4 game, which, by the way, we'll have a champion in hockey by the end of tonight. But I got to Ridgeview to watch a Frozen 4 game, and we were early. But I was watching the Twins game when I was en route, and it was 1-1 in the 8th inning. And I thought, oh, no big deal. I'll get to Ridgeview, and they'll have it on, and I'll see the end of this. And then it'll be just in time to watch the Frozen 4. Well, I walked into Ridgeview, and about 72 TVs were on some I don't know, whatever golf weekend tournament in whatever country was going on. I was like, come on. But,
yeah, right.
But I love everybody out of Ridgeview, so I'll end that right there. But yes, when I do turn into the highlights, all I see in golf, and I don't know what else they're supposed to do, so this isn't a shot at golf, but what you see is if somebody goes Happy Gilmore and crushes a tee shot, what you see is if somebody gets a hole-in-one, they're going to show it no matter where that person is on the leaderboard. And what you also tend to see is if somebody has a major shank, somebody finds the water or the trees, you're going to see that as well, especially if they're a big name. And then what do you see? Of course, the supposed climactic moment, you see quality putts that go in.
Yeah, no, 100%. And putts can be spelled with an S or a Z in our case.
Especially if you're a Mariners fan. Do you remember J.J. Putz?
I do.
I think it was Putz, but at the same time, he was on my fantasy team once or twice.
Yeah, he was a pretty good closer for them for a couple of years.
He was. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take these golf terms and we're going to try to relate it as best we can. And the interpretation of how you relate it is kind of open for business. But we're going to take each of these and pertain it to the 4 men's pro teams. So what is your big drive, or who is your big driver? Who is your hole-in-one, as in, don't blink, that was a one-hit wonder. You're not going to see something like that again. Who or what was your major shank of, oh my goodness, what egg on our face moment did we have as a team or as an individual player? And then the fun one might be, who's your putts? Because it might be a great player who you just can't stand his antics, or you might see a player that they depended on and just never got it done. It might be a coaching decision that you're going, why is he here?
Okay.
That one might be the most fun.
Well, I think...
The problem is, by the way, we only have 14 minutes.
Okay. I think by explanation, Brian, you should go with your putts in hockey, because if you're not understanding what it is we're trying to do, you gave me a fantastic example, maybe the best example for a long time on any of the things we did.
I'm proud to be able to say that then. Thank you for the glowing introduction. So when it comes to the Wild missing a defenseman, usually the topic is the Brent Burns trade, the Brent Burns trade, the Brent Burns trade. And I can barely say it right because I'm so sick of talking about it. But for me, the defenseman that we swung and missed on by saying, okay, we don't need you, go ahead and part ways with us, sure could use Nick Leddy these days, but we went and got Cam Barker. I would have rather had Bob Barker.
I 100% agree. I remember listening to Lou Nanny and him going, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yes. So that would be the example of.
So Cam Barker becomes my putz, even though it's not his fault. Really, it should be the brass that pulled the plug on said deal.
Right. No, I agree. So that's the example that I wanted to make sure we use. But let's finish with putts because it's going to be the most fun.
All right. So do you want to stick with the Wild? Because my big drive is the guy who played this way. The shootout hasn't been a thing for all that long. Now, it's happened enough times where people think that, but for a long time, this didn't exist. The Wild had one of the most fun shootout participants because this was his game in general, and also the reason I had a soul patch for a while, he and Joe Nathan. My big drive is Brian Rolston because he wasn't going to finesse you. He wasn't going to, break ankles, as they say in basketball, or, walk a defender, as I say, doing play-by-play. He was just going to shoot it through you. So he's definition big drive for me.
Yeah, for me, it's Gaborik. Like, Gaborik was the definition of a big drive, right? He wasn't necessarily defensive stalwart, right? But if you needed a goal, he went and got a goal. People that watch Kaprizov now, that's a different kind of player. But you know how when Kaprizov has a puck in the offensive zone and you're like, oh, this one's going away? Or when Fiala had that 2-month hot stretch the year he got traded where it was just, if the puck was by Fiala, it was going in. Well, Gaborik was like that regularly. Like, if he was on the ice, people said it was one of those things. Well, I have to go to the bathroom. Oh, wait, Gaborik's on a shift. I can't go. Do you know what I mean? Because something would happen amazing when he was on it. He was always been my big swing for the Wild.
All right. Who's your hole-in-one? Who's your one-hit wonder that, hey, that one play or that one moment or that one season was awesome?
Okay, so I'm going in the Wayback Machine. I'm going to go pre-Wild. I'm going to go North Stars.
Okay.
So when the North Stars were floundering a little bit, so was a team called the Cleveland Barons.
Yes.
And in the weirdest thing maybe in sports history, they just combined the two teams. And they kept them in Minnesota. And it got us guys like Dennis Maruk, right? Players who made that North Stars team go from an also-ran to pretty good because they had two entire teams to choose from.
Right.
So I think that's my hole-in-one. Only happened once.
All right, so maybe I cheated at my own invention because my hole-in-one already has two. Because Richard Park is known for one moment. Mm-hmm. Sending a series to Game 7 against Colorado with his big goal in Game 6. And he kind of went down in Wild lore for one moment. So for me, he qualifies. The other one for me is literally a play on words with the number one, Brizgalov, as a goaltender who had to come in relief in the playoffs. And the Wild won the game and won the series, I believe, in overtime again. And he made one save. Got the win. He made one save.
Do you remember, though, how much mileage he got out of that?
Right.
Like all of a sudden he was a guy again. All right, so the greatest shank for the Wild.
See, shank and putts is hard for me because they shanked a trade in a big way, I thought. Where did you come up with for shank? Because,
Stanchion.
Well, yeah, that would be the worst bounce.
Yep, that's shank because you control how those things are set up, right? So that may be on the X, it may be on the manufacturer, but the shank that they had was the situation that got us to the stanchion goal.
So I thought you were going to go Thomas Vanek just because you had such expectations for him, and he didn't come up. I went with Danny Heatley. Kicking the tires on Danny Heatley, that was a bit of a shank move. You were grasping at straws. We listed some players last week that the Wild had done this with, and you took big names, but you took them Roger Dorn style. Wish we had him 2 years ago kind of thing.
Yep.
And kicking the tires on Danny Heatley, that was a bit of a shank for me.
And they planned on Heatley.
Right.
Like he wasn't coming in to take a wing and a prayer on. Like he was going to be a guy, and he turned out not to be.
All right, so which team do you want to go to next, the Wild or Dunn?
Well, I'm going to give you my putts quick.
Okay.
Martin Hansel.
Right. Yes.
The trade.
Another trade that never should happen.
You want to blame the trade. You want to blame the guy for what he brought to a locker room. But that was a team that was on a roll.
Hansel's so hot right now, cooled everything off for that Wild campaign.
Yep, just poured cold water on the whole thing. All right.
Wasn't it? They acquired another guy, and his last name was White, and I think he ended up performing better than Hansel did.
No, you're right. And but it was a horrible trade because of what it did to the locker room.
Right.
The guy Guerin would never make that trade.
Absolutely not. Next team.
Let's go with the Vikings.
All right, so the big drive, I think I took this in the literal sense, It's Kirk with the one time that we thought, here's the guy we can lean on. Now, he had lots of game-winning drives, but he did it in the playoffs once in overtime against New Orleans. You could even narrow it down to the one throw to Thielen.
Yeah, no, that's a very good one. I'm going a little bit bigger picture, and that is the 2,000-yard season of Adrian Peterson.
Yeah.
Like, because he was it. Like, he was the offense, and nobody could stop him. And so the fact that they were wise enough to just say, until you can stop him, we're going to run him, and nobody did. And that was such a big drive for the Vikes. That's mine there.
Who's your hole-in-one, your proverbial one-hit wonder for the Vikes?
Oh, that was hard.
I got one that feels really weird, but I think you have to define it this way.
So the one-hit wonder for the hole-in-one for the Vikings really to me is difficult, because I was trying to figure out who it was, and for me, the one-hit wonder, because of how it started, is Kevin Williams.
Sure.
Right? Because
once we finally got the card up to the table.
That should have been a total farce.
Yeah.
And instead, we got lucky. And when's the last time the Vikings got lucky in a draft?
Right.
Probably Kevin Williams.
Hopefully we can talk about that again in about 2 weeks and say, they got really lucky with this entire draft. This could be a franchise-changing draft because the Vikings need a quarterback. The one-hit wonder that I chose, the hole-in-one, this just feels weird because it doesn't describe this player's career at all. But the Vikings needed a quarterback in 2009 as well, and they got a guy named Brett Favre.
Yeah.
As a Viking, he was a one-hit wonder. 2009 was incredible. 2010 was a nightmare.
We have 3 quarterbacks like that. Right. Cunningham was like that in 98. He was that guy in
99. George was like that in 99.
George is the other one.
Right.
So, yeah, no, I agree. That makes a lot of sense. That's that lightning in a bottle bit. How about Shank for the Vikings?
I took it in the literal sense again. Blair from 27 against Seattle at TCF was literally shanked. You could pick a kicker here.
The easiest shank for me for the Vikings of all time is Demetrius Underwood.
Right.
Like we had read before the show, the Vikings knew he didn't play his senior year at Michigan State. Not that he was hurt.
The Vikings didn't know that.
Off.
You want to think Kwesi does some weird things. How about not doing your homework on Mr. Underwood? And I even made a joke to you before we started on the show. I said, there you go. There's one more piece of weaponry for Kirk haters. The Vikings had bad experiences with Michigan State. They should have steered clear.
Right, exactly. All right, so for the putts for me for the Minnesota Vikings, I had Erasmus James originally because he doesn't like football. Right. Drafted him in the first round.
Right.
But I want to make it different and call it the drafts over the last 3 years. Because of what we are facing today, we have no depth, we have no talent. It passed like Jefferson, and now we need a quarterback. And because we didn't draft any depth, we need everything.
I think you're going to like my putts because it's not deep thought, but it's a oh yeah type moment. My putts was Dwayne Rudd because man, he was talented. Man, he could make plays. But man, he loved to get in your face and tell you that and get a stupid 15-yard penalty or take his helmet off to tell you how great he was and get a 15-yard penalty or just miss making a play and pop a quarterback 2 seconds late and get a roughing the passer call. Dwayne Rudd was so incredibly talented with a football IQ that just wasn't where it needed to be, and he was the facepalm linebacker for me.
Absolutely right. So let's go big drive for the Twins, and I'm going to start with Carlos Gomez, run around the bases to win game 163. And then when he popped up and his eyes were the size of saucers, that's one of the coolest visuals I've ever had of the Twins.
Probably Alexi Casillas' finest moment as well. Big drives for me. Again, I took it more literal. I look at Kirby Puckett's home run in Game 6 of 91, the biggest drive to get that series to 7 to set the stage for Jack Morris to do what he did. And the last time we can talk about a Minnesota men's pro sport team being a champion. That's one for me. The other one, first walk-off in the history of Target Field, Jim Thome changed the season by walking it off with a big bomb against Matt Thornton, his former teammate. So those are my big drives. I keep cheating. I'm doing 2 where we're supposed to do 1.
That's okay.
But that's a good segue to 1. Who's your one-hit wonder hole-in-one guy?
Jim Thome.
Okay.
Because when we went and got a guy we always kind of felt should play here, he went from Jim Thome to Paul Bunyan. Like for moments for moments you
literally
just
in a commercial he did.
Yeah. And so Jim Thome, the whole what happened when they signed him, as far as everything kind of fell into place. Everybody not just liked the signing, but really wanted to like the guy, and then he came through.
So my hole-in-one literally had seemingly one good year. The Twins have a good history of rookies of the year.
Yeah.
And most of those rookies of the year have pretty decorated Twins careers. There's a giant exception here. Marty Cordova was awesome for about a year.
There's 2.
Don't blink, and he was done after that.
John Castino's.
Yes, well, Darn those back injuries. Yeah.
He got injured. All right, so let's move forward to the shank for the Twins. So I originally had one, and then you helped me out with the real one.
Okay, go ahead.
So originally it was Ken Phelps, because we went and got Ken Phelps because we needed somebody who could drive in runs, and he was Joey Gallo, basically. He hit like 0.0, and then they had to get rid of him right away. We've had a lot of those guys that came at the end of their career to be a DH and just fizzled, but he was the first one for me. But the real answer is Ron Davis.
Yeah.
Like, Ron Davis is the greatest shank in Twins history because he cost, you know how they say a great bullpen can make a game 7 innings? Well, Ron Davis could make a game 1 inning, and it was the 9th, and he could give up whatever, tying run, winning run, whichever one you needed at that time, he would give it up. And then we'd have to run all the rest of our bullpen out to try to win the game. But he, by himself, right, if he came into the game, everybody, the air just went out of the stadium. When Joe Nathan came in, it was like, all right, we got this.
Right.
When Ron Davis came in, it was like, gosh.
They went to him again?
Right. Here we go. We're going to be a 500 team. Because
the Emilio Pagan acquisition woke up all the Ron Davis fans.
Right. That's a very good and so is the closer the year before.
Fernando Rodney?
No, the guy from the Chicago White Sox that lost everything the year before Pagan. He threw soft.
You've stumped me.
I'll find it.
Okay.
I'll find it. But yeah, so Ron Davis for me is, once we mentioned it's the easiest one.
Fair enough. So just like you went with the recent drafts, I'm going to go with a Twins philosophy. And no, it's not the bleep cheap poll ads, but my shank is the belief in pitching reclamation projects, because there's a list of them that goes back almost a solid 10 years, whether it's Mike Pelfrey, Vance Worley, Shoemaker, Archer, etc. It's, we got a guy that was great about 6-7 years ago. If we can find that again, boy, have we struck gold. Instead, we've got absolutely nothing to show for a 4th or 5th pitcher that doesn't belong in the league anymore. Or I could go even deeper with a philosophy that you and I have talked about, Dave, where the Twins had a lot of quadruple A players. There is no quadruple A people. Oh, yeah, Alex Colomé. There you go. I forgot him for a good reason. He was another one, maybe a quadruple A player, would dominate the minors, didn't have anything left in the majors. So that's my shank.
Yeah, nope, I'm there. All right, so let's go with the Wolves real quick, right?
Well, we need Twins putzes real quick. Mine is Danny Valencia. Almost made it as my one-hit wonder because it looked like we had another third baseman of the future. How many times have we been almost at that position? Then somebody told him how good he was, and he disappeared.
What Dan Serafini? Dan Serafini was
a decent reliever.
Well, he was so good when they drafted him. They interrupted a Twins game and brought him on TV,
right,
to talk about him. And then when he washed out, he became. And the only thing he ever really was good at was, I guess, murder, because he's in jail now. But the kid he was the guy they drafted the year before Garza.
Yeah.
Right. And Garza turned into something, and Serafini didn't.
All right, we got to whip through the Wolves. Big drive for me was probably the big ticket, Kevin Garnett. But the guy I enjoyed until now, watching Ant is probably the best, but the guy I enjoyed really watching on the drive, as in dribble drive as a Timberwolf, he wasn't here that long, but he's certainly in legendary lore. It's Marbury.
Yeah, no, Steph is a really, really, really good one. For me, it's the original scorer. For me, it was watching Tony Campbell.
Yeah.
Because at that point, you saw that NBA players didn't have to dunk all the time, right? The hole-in-one for the Wolves, when that Bulls forward went and blocked a shot to get against Denver to get us into the playoffs.
Taj Gibson moment.
Forever, the Taj Gibson moment.
So my one-hit wonder was part of the KG trade when they got a slew of players, but a slew of players that didn't move the needle at all.
At all.
But for about a minute, I thought Ryan Gomes was going to be okay.
Yeah.
He would show up with a good perimeter jumper once in a while, and he'd go for 25 randomly, and you go, well, maybe they got something there. Well, they got something. His name was Al Jefferson. But you wanted more than that, and you thought Gomes was going to be it, and maybe once a month he was.
Who was the point guard that they got in that they were so excited because he was super fast? Banks, is that right?
He was on the team, and Raymond Sessions and Luke Ridenour, and we could go through wastes of Wolves point guards.
My shank is simple. You know what my shank is.
Luke Longley and Felton Spencer.
Butler.
Jimmy Butler,
because they swung big. He could have been the big drive. Instead, he was a brutal shank.
My shanks are all the back-to-back drafts, whether it be annually taking a center with Spencer and Longley or 2 point guards in a draft. It's basically saying we're not sure, we're just sure we need this position, so they try again.
3 point guards in that draft, Brian.
The other one was the other one Ty Lawson, by the way?
Yes, it was.
Thank you.
The putts for the Wolves. For me, it's coach du jour because they've picked a lot of putts coaches, but the biggest one for me is Rambis.
It's Kurt Rambis, and that really should have been my shank because I didn't like the coaching decision that opened up when they let Dwayne Casey go. Basically, providing us with a 500 team with a roster full of misfits. The biggest putz for me is still on the team. And he's so darn talented. And he just came back last night. Karl Anthony Towns could be the best thing to happen to this team down the stretch here, or we could get back to, hey, he made a great move. Hey, he didn't make the shot. Hey, he thinks he got fouled. Hey, he spent the next 10 minutes worrying about that instead of playing the opposite end of the floor.
A lot of pouting going on.
Absolutely.
Remember, life coach.
Yes, Justin May told us that, and guess what? Justin May got one right.
Yep.
I'll tell you this, one thing we're right about is it's hip to be square. We're bumping out with this song for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's off the Huey Lewis in the News 4 album, and we said we were talking about the Masters. We did it our way here on the Northland Sports page because, Dave Cook, you and I are a couple squares because we don't care about the Masters.
You got that right.
We're just trying to be masters of the next hour and a half of radio. We're going to get some help from Chad Greenway. Stick around. We'll be right back. I do love that song, Sledgehammer from Peter Gabriel. Little longer taste of it for our listeners because we were connecting with Chad Greenway, but it's always a joy, Dave Cook, when we get to talk to Chad. This should be a fun segment.
Oh, 100%. I think what was funny is I was trying to find Chad's draft year, right? So I pulled up Chad Greenway, and the very first entry was daughter. So Chad's been passed.
And now it's which one, because both of them are lighting up prep scoreboards everywhere.
Yeah, no, that was pretty funny.
We'll talk a little bit about that as well. Speaking of Chad Greenway's draft, you may have caught him on 9 to noon with PA yesterday. One of the few drafted by Fran Foley because don't blink and his GM tenure was over.
Yeah, right. What was it? The triumvirate of power? Is that what they called it? Something like that?
Yeah, the triangle of authority or whatever it was.
With him and Rick and was it No,
it was Chili.
Was it? All right.
So let's see if we can make a triangle of authority between the three of us. Dave Cook, Brian Prudhomme, and let's bring in Chad Greenway. Chad, good morning, buddy.
Hey, good morning. We need to stop talking about all the things you just talked about when the Fran Foley days, at least. My goodness, some wild memories, guys, about that whole process after I got drafted. Some fun fact is, I get drafted, and I think it was the next Monday they actually fire him, and I'm like, wow, they must have loved that draft that much that they fired the dude. They drafted that class the day after the draft. It was like a little humbling. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm not sure what that means, but here we go.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit because I'll admit to listening to your segment with PA yesterday as part of the Friday Football Feast. I really enjoyed it, but I kind of sarcastically texted PA and said, well, I listened for a couple reasons. One, I enjoy it. And number two, I have to try to ask him different things than PA did. So I was very attentive yesterday. But when you guys were talking about Fran Foley, I'll again admit to go into his Wikipedia page, and it talked about, that almost immediate firing. And they did say, well, there was some scrutiny involving the draft picks. And then they said in hindsight, it was pretty good because there were a lot of key starters that were drafted in that class.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Cook played O-line for a few years, did some nice stuff. Ray Edwards had a nice career. Myself,
DJ.
Travaris, Cedric Griffin. There's some nice players that came out of that draft, and I'm missing a few, obviously. But the reality is we had some good players and some good free agents, and I think that it was. You're also talking about the triangle of authority,
yes.
And that was actually after Fran Foley. That was Rick, Chili, and Rob Brzezinski. As I believe was the triangle of authority is how that kind of worked. So Rob, of course, does our contracts and negotiation.
So we are talking with Chad Greenway, former Viking, but also former Iowa Hawkeye, and I want to go down that road for a bit here. And I'm going to start with a question that maybe nobody has asked you because every time she made a bucket, we certainly saw Jason Sudeikis and his reaction. We've seen George Kittle at games. How many times have you seen Caitlin Clark play in person? And if you have, are the cameras just not trying hard enough to find you?
I've seen her play in person, 3 or 4 times. Obviously incredibly impressive. I did not get out to the Final Four this year. I went last year. We didn't make the drive to Cleveland with a bunch of stuff going on with the kids and family. Had a little travel, so we couldn't make it. The crazy part is obviously being a Hawkeye is we've been able to be down there I've probably seen her practice more than I've seen her play live. And it's fun to see her interaction, fun to see her focus, fun to see how she gets after it and how her teammates get after her and just the way they compete. Obviously, as Hawkeyes, couldn't be more proud of our university and what they accomplished. Obviously, Caitlin gets a lot of attention, but it's beyond her, really an incredible team, an incredible journey they've been on. And people forget that our Hawkeyes were in the Elite Eight with Megan Gustafson and that crew about 3 years ago. Probably 4 or 5 years ago now. So we've had a good run here, some high level teams, which is fun.
Yeah, you definitely have. And Dave, I'll tell you one area that doesn't forget that is this area because they claim Megan Gustafson is part of the Northland, having been at Port Wing and what have you. And Actually, just
was she Rice Lake or she Port Wing? Where was she from?
She was Port Wing, yeah. And actually, she just made the news up here yesterday because she won a Euro Cup overseas as well. So her decorated career continues, and she'll be in the WNBA when the season begins.
I think what I noticed, as a Hawkeye, obviously, very proud, and I'm sure there's a lot of people rolling their eyes as Gopher fans, whatever, listening to this right now. But the reality is the people that Lisa Bluter, the people that come out of her program are just incredibly great people. So whether that's who she's recruiting, the families, the parents, but also how she develops these young women is incredible. And even to see Caitlin from her freshman year when they come in as just kind of really rough around the edges, really emotional, kind of high-level player, she's really become a great teammate. And it's kind of, we've all seen this kind of morph over the last 4 years of her maturity. So I think Bluter does a nice job, and so yeah, it was a fun experience having your alma mater go as deep as they did these last few years.
100% true, but the Gopher fan does have to point out my favorite stat for Caitlin Clark, and that is she outscored the Iowa Hawkeye football team over this year versus last year. Oh, you want our offensive football team to score points? Why would you want that? That's weird. You can't win defensively if you do that. That's 100% true. Chad, a question for you, and it's kind of a Caitlin Clark question, but I want your experiences on it. Now, talent like Caitlin is generational, but she's moving up to a level where most of the kids she's playing against aren't going to play. She's moving up to WNBA where everybody was that good. What's going to be her biggest challenge going from college to pro?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is going to be just living. The nice part is she's lived under more scrutiny in these last two runs. She's made the Final Four that she probably will in the WNBA because just the attention that's come to women's basketball, and we all hope that she can bring that same attention to the WNBA. I mean, that's for sure what we all want. We want to see that league continue to get stronger. I think she's going to have to just deal with the haters constantly. I mean, it's just what she's done and become accustomed to. I think the physicality of the actual gameplay will be physicality. And then, the ability of some of these high-level defenders to stay in front of her and not make it easy for her to get the ball. You saw what, obviously, South Carolina was able to do and take her away. You saw what UConn was able to do with their really good defender. It made it really hard. She still found a way. But, again, when you're playing on a team with 5 really good starters and players and you spread the ball around, statistically, she's not going to be taking as many shots. She's not going to be on the ball probably as much. So, it'll be an adjustment just like every rookie, no matter what level. You have a level of adjustment. So, it's not fair to think that she's going to come in averaging 35 and 10 because no rookie's done that.
Yep.
That's a fair statement. Now, I know PA did ask you yesterday, I think he asked you right off the top, how the girls enjoyed watching Caitlin Clark play. I want to take a different spin on it, and I want you to feel free to talk about both daughters because one's gotten a lot of hype, and I think the younger one is deserving and awfully fast because she chipped into Providence Academy's championship very, very well. But specifically for Madden, does she watch the tournament a little bit differently because she's going to have some choices to make here soon? Is she watching it differently than just basketball? Is she looking at culture, looking at coaches, looking at camaraderie because she's got big decisions ahead?
Yeah, she really does. It's funny. I mean, my wife and I, both being Hawkeyes, we watch it from a complete fan perspective of our alumni. As alumni and as proud of our alma mater. I mean, she's watching from a lot of these programs that haven't had a chance to recruit her, looking at coaching, looking at now, of course, transfer portal movement, all those things. They now go into a decision to make a college decision. And what's going to be the best fit? What's the best system for her to go in and hopefully have an impact in? And also, who do you want to be around? Who do you want to be as teammates? What part of the world do you want to be in? All those things really matter and factor in. So, yeah, a lot of discussion in the house, and she looks at it with kind of a different eye than a lot of people do.
Chad, I'm going to take it out of basketball here for a second. I wanted to ask you, because draft is coming up, when you were drafted, I'm wondering what players took you under their wing. Who was the one that helped you learn to be a pro?
Yeah, Ben Lever is number one. I mean, that's why he's still a great friend of mine. I mean, it wasn't even necessarily football, but more just life, how to live, how to make decisions, how to handle being a pro. And then, of course, the football part of how to prepare, how to watch film, all those things. E.J. Henderson was influential, Steve Hutchinson, Jim Kleinsasser. A lot of really great guys that just kind of said, hey, watch this, or come watch this, or this is how you do it, or I would just tag along and just observe. And, the one thing some people remember is that I lost my first year or two in ACL.
Right.
And what I basically turned that into was a redshirt year. And how I handled that was, I was in my training room, getting my work done, getting my rehab done, grinding that way, but then also like going and watching tape with those guys, seeing what they're looking for, seeing how they prepare for a game, taking notes and all that stuff. That way, when I got my opportunity, in 2007 against Joey Harrington and the Atlanta Falcons, I took my best approach and I knew how to handle it. So, Ben was probably the most impactful for me.
So, Brian, the other thing he got to do was rehab with Erasmus so he could see how not necessarily to do everything. But go ahead, you have the next question.
Shots fired. Well, I'm going to do a little bit of an off-the-cuff.
There's a blast. There's a name from the past, Erasmus James. Yeah, I mean, you talk about having an unbelievable college career and just not panning out or working out. And again, several personal decisions off the field impact these people, these players, more than most things. Usually it's off the field is where the impact comes.
So I want to go off the cuff a little bit here because we've talked basketball, we've talked football, but you mentioned Jim Kleinsasser. Did you know, Chad, because I didn't until Mountain West Tonka boys came to the Little East Gym this winter, did you know Jim Kleinsasser is on the coaching staff of the Mountain West Tonka boys team?
Of course I do. I have breakfast with Jim quite often. So Jim's got two boys, both in the Mountain West Tonka program. Jim was obviously one of the freakiest athletes in the Midwest ever. Hoops, football, track. I mean, just unbelievable athlete. And, top 5 freak I ever played with or against is Jim. I mean, he's just a specimen. And that's why he's so proud of his boys. He's so proud of their development. They're finding their own path and doing their own thing. And actually, Providence Academy played Mountain West Tonka in football, so I got to see Carter Kleinsasser, his oldest play, and just a lot of fun to watch Jim be a dad, and he's very good at it, and his boys are doing well.
Yeah, when I was working public address that afternoon, I kind of chuckled to myself because I remember a couple years ago when you guys played at Duluth East in the Breakdown Classic when Providence played MIB. You and I communicated across the gym because we knew each other. Well, it's easy to spot Jim Kleinsasser. You mentioned a freakish athlete. He's got freakish build. But I've never seen somebody try so hard to just look like another parent. Sorry, Mr. Kleinsasser, when you're that big, you didn't look like just another guy in the East Gym. But I don't think anybody bothered him, so that was good. But you joked with Dave about the Iowa offensive football team, which seems like an oxymoron, and you said you can't win defensively if you score points. I want to talk a little bit about the Vikings with the draft coming up, but also with the offseason, because the draft is going to be all about do they or don't they find their quarterback of the future. The offseason in terms of free agency has been about winning with defense. The Cashman signing, the Grenard signing. What's your thoughts on players like those?
Those are impactful players. They're going to impact the outcomes of games, no question. Not like a quarterback, obviously. We know all the impact of what a quarterback can do, but that's the stability of your organization. That's the decision makers about as far as on the field. They're going to be your leaders in the clubhouse. I mean, those are good players, good vets who have earned the right to be in this position. I mean, Blake is obviously a local kid, has done so well, played so good, and earned this right to be here. So for him specifically, I'm fired up because I've known him for a number of years, and he's a great guy. But again, we can all say all we want about linebackers. They're really important, but they're not a quarterback, and that's what we all have our eyes on.
We certainly do, so I want to get your take on that. Now, you've been pretty transparent with the guy that you covet. I believe you're pretty high on Drake May. Some are. I would say most are. Some aren't.
Merrill Hodgson.
But exactly, and I think Chris Sims may not be either, but I'm not sure. At the same time, though, Chad, where do you think the Vikings go to do this? Because it is draft season, and there's so many mock drafts. I'm getting to the point now where I start to call mock drafts mockery drafts because I even saw one earlier this week where they had the Vikings trading up, and they traded up to take Neighbors, the wide receiver, and I thought, why would you do that unless you're banking on losing JJ? Where and who do you in your heart of hearts see the Vikings taking if they take a quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, I only say May. I don't say May because I think he's the best talent or because I think he's the most he's the option that may most be readily available for them, which means to me a lot of teams don't covet him maybe as many as others. So I'm looking at it from the standpoint of who's going to actually be there when we pick that's going to be an opportunity to change our organization. I think that gives us the best shot. Now, again, how many – I think there's going to be a lot less trade than we think. I think there's going to be a lot less movement than we think. I think we're going to end up picking right where we're at. That's what I believe. And I think there's a chance, unfortunately, that we pick best player available if we don't want to reach a quarterback, because we've done that before in that similar position and it hasn't worked out. So if somebody falls to you because the value of is looked differently and we like him, then I think you take your quarterback there. If not, I think you stay and take best player available, or trade back, gain more picks, and take the next quarterback you like.
Yeah, that might be the thing because they're paper thin as well. But I was going to ask Chad that question, kind of the quarterback question, and when it comes to Michael Penix. So we saw over the playoffs at Penix at his best and Penix under pressure. But as an NFL prospect with injuries, the injury bug that he's had, how much concern does the team have? Can they say, he's healthy now, or do they have to say, yeah, but let's look at his history?
Oh, I think they're very concerned about it. I think that's why you go to the combine. Everybody sees the glitz and glamour of the 40 and these other things at the combine, but really what you go there is for a medical check. I mean, that's what really is the most impactful thing. Is you're going to get scans up and down. You're going to look at all the old injuries and how they've healed, and you're going to get a full glimpse of the body. And they're very alarmed because you're about to take your first pick, potentially take your first pick, and spend a lot of money and risk the entirety of the next 5 years of your organization on this pick, especially if it's a quarterback. So, to me, I think what Penix did in college is incredible. I would not want to see him wearing purple. I mean, again, I'm a homer, so if he's here, we pick him. I'm all in.
Right.
You didn't hear this. We can't put this back if we do draft him. I don't want to be held accountable, but the reality is if I had my pick, I wouldn't go that route. It's just, I guess that'd be the best way to put it. I think he's an excellent player. He had an unbelievable college career. But if I'm looking to say we need to go get somebody who's going to establish our organization for the next decade, we haven't had that guy for a long, long time, and I don't think that it's him based off of, players like him that have come before, especially with the injury on top of all that as well.
Can I ask you the lefty part? He's a left-handed quarterback, and you don't see that a lot. Is there something, that you don't go that direction?
See, now, Chad, now you know which one of us listened to 9 to Noon yesterday and which one didn't, because you guys were all over the lefty piece. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry.
We were all over it yesterday, and that's okay. I think it's a fair thing to ask because my experience based off talking to receivers only in the NFL was their preference to not catch from a lefty because of how the ball is so different. Now, again, if you're a guy and you play with the guy for a number of years, like anything in sport, you're going to get used to it and it's become normal to you. I just look at the number of players. I think Nordo said it yesterday that there's one guy in all of football in the NFL that threw a pass last year who was left-handed.
Oh,
now,
wow.
does that mean because you think about the structure of your offense when you simply make that change from right to left. Your left tackle becomes your right becomes your left. Your offensive line is completely different, and your offense has to switch from a strong side to a weak side and a weak side to a strong side, because of simply their ability to make a better throw or a worse throw. That's just how everybody's built when you throw a football. Every rollout, every boot, every decision. Now, again, that's just flipping the script and going the other direction, but how much of your offense is going to be impacted by that? And, I think there's probably coaches out there thinking you didn't really, sometimes you don't think about that stuff, how the structure of your style of play, the structure of where you can put your athletes. I mean, I would choose to not go lefty if you were asking me.
Chatting with Chad Greenway. Chad, I want to put you in the shoes of Sam Darnold right now because there's a lot of quarterback discussion, but none of it seemingly is about him. It's who's going to be the heir apparent or who's going to take his spot as quickly as possible, depending on what happens in the draft. Put yourself in the shoes of a bridge quarterback. What is going through Sam Darnold's mind right now? Because this is a former top 5 pick, basically, who's never lived up to the hype. A lot of people have said if he had gone anywhere but the Jets to start, he may have been on a much different trajectory. We're Vikings fans. You just said if he puts on our jersey, we're all in. We want this guy to do well because it sure seems like he's going to be QB1. But depending on who you draft, there's also going to be part of us that says, okay, we want you to move aside because we want to see the kid. How do you react to things if you're Sam Darnold right now?
Well, you buckle down and play. You're a pro. I mean, the reality is that you've had the opportunity and you haven't delivered. And as a pro, the only thing they're looking for is a cheaper, better option always. So if you're not getting it done, they're going to look somewhere else. And that's just the reality of where he's at. Now, what he should be looking at is this is what Baker Mayfield did last year. I mean, you couldn't have a better example of saying, hey, I can go flip my career on its head by going and playing. New start, young coach, understands, I think, what his quarterbacks do well. I think we saw him handle some really good stuff this year with quarterbacks in and out and kind of shuffling them. I think we saw that O'Connell can give guys an opportunity to be successful and win. And I think he'll do that for Sam. But and this is a whole conversation about, do we trade up to 3? Do we trade up to 4 to go get our guy? We have a guy who was taken, third?
Right.
I believe.
Exactly.
Darnold. And what happens is the only thing that is guaranteed in the draft is that you have no idea how they're going to be. You really don't. I mean, even if you can look at the first overall pick, second overall pick. We can talk about Caleb Williams being the most sure thing that's ever come out of college football.
And then what happens if he becomes Jamarcus Russell, right?
And then what happens if he shows up and he ain't what we thought he was? And guess what? That's just the draft.
Yeah.
You know, there's a reason Brady goes late. There's a reason some of these late-round picks get figured out because they get the right system. They have enough talent. They figure it out. They have a coach who's patient. You know, there's a number of factors. They go to a team that has an unbelievable defense that gives them multiple chances. I mean, the reality is you just don't know. So you might trade to 3 and trade the whole organization's future to go get a guy, and in 3 years be looking to draft or go get somebody else because he just wasn't who we thought he was. That's just the nature of the draft, and that's what makes it exciting. This makes it fun to talk about, and that's what brings all the drama to the NFL is they've kind of positioned themselves in this way, and it makes it fun. And so, again, Sam Darnold seems like a great guy.
Right.
He's got unbelievable talent. It's undeniable, but there's a lot of talented guys that don't play. So can KOC unlock something in Sam by giving him the right system, giving him the right plays, you know, and then you have the whole discussion about JJ because Sam Darnold becomes a lot better if we have a healthy JJ who's motivated and wants to play. But then do you pay him $200 million if you have no quarterback to throw to him? And there's a lot of questions here that need to be answered. And quite honestly, doesn't matter how long I played or how long, Quasi's been the GM, you just don't, these decisions are hard and challenging. And unless we're in the boardroom, we don't know the direction they're going to go.
100% correct. Ideally, we'll have great options. Maybe Sam Darnold does go Baker Mayfield on the bit, but we get our guy in the draft anyway. It's awesome to have good options. Speaking of having good options, Grey Duck has a lot of those. I'm not doing my job if I don't close talking about that. You have a beer now, my friend. What else you got?
We do, yeah. I mean, Duck Beer, DDB, and it's you'll see on the can if you've been able to see it in the market. Duck Beer is giving right back to Dinkytown athletes, the NIL collective. So all you guys rolling your eyes about my Hawkeyes, our business only supports the Gophers. So there you have that one. I get some heck from my Hawkeye brothers and sisters with that one. But the reality is 20% of those proceeds when you go buy Duck Beer. It's a great Pilsner. It's really easy to drink, and you're supporting directly back to Gopher Athletics when you buy it. And I think that's something that's interesting. We try to take a unique approach to launching the beer, and our vodka program's working out the same way. So you can actually go to our website, Grey Duck Spirits, look at locations that are carrying Duck Beer, and go buy it and support the athletes, the Gophers. So we have a lot of fun stuff going on, man. So the Grey Duck deck is open at Target Field.
Yes,
check
it is.
that out if you're at Target Field, and it's always flowing Bomba juices out there. So, it's gonna be a fun season.
Bomba Juice is the best. Chad, so are you. Every time we get you as a guest, I think, wow, as a show, we just got a great catch. Speaking of which, it was a fair catch. You have yourself a wonderful weekend, my friend.
Oh, man, you had to go there. Well, guess what? We got jobs on that call, and we still made the Big Ten championship game. So how does that make you feel?
Chad, we love you. Let's do this again soon, my friend.
See ya.
All right, that's our guy, Chad Greenway. That's going to be tough to top. We'll try it playing buy or sell next. Stick around. We will be right back. We love a goodbye here on the Northland Sports page. We're about to say goodbye to hour number 1. We are way behind time, but when you get a good time with Chad Greenway, you take that risk.
Absolutely right. What a great interview.
It was outstanding. We'll get right to it. Buy or sell goes like this. I'm going to give a statement for each of the 4 major men's sports leagues. Dave agrees. He says buy, and he'll tell me why. He disagrees. He says sell, and he'll tell me why. He's always got great takes. Toughest part he has is telling us the order in which to play. Spoiler alert, a lot of this is just going to be your personal opinion today, and I'll give mine as well.
Minnesota Vikings. Let's go NFL.
All right, so the NFL, Chad kind of hit on it. He believes we're going to pick right where we're at right now with 2 spots, 11 and 23. Buy or sell that you'd like the Vikings to trade up?
Oh, so I would have given you a different answer 3 hours ago.
Okay.
But I listened to Chip Scoggins say something in an interview, and he said at this point in their careers, you'd rather play offense than defense if you're Adolfo-Mensah and O'Connell, meaning that be aggressive, go get your guy, rather than sitting there waiting where you're at and hoping the guy that you're somewhat interested in shows up. Now, there's a price point, right? But if you're going to go down swinging, right? So take the swing. I think they're going to trade up. Personally, as a draft guy, I'd deal back from 11. But first of all, Quasi hasn't necessarily endured strength in his drafting ability.
Okay.
But I think KOC knows what a quarterback looks
So that's a very long answer. Are you buying or selling?
I am buying.
That you would like them to trade up?
Yep.
All right. I'm going to sell, and I never thought I'd be in a situation where 27 years out of high school, I could bring up my high school economic teacher. But you brought up there's a price point, and Mrs. Jablonski, thank you for teaching me an Econ 101 at Duluth East. At what cost? Because that's the part we don't know.
Yeah.
Because do I want them to trade up and get a franchise-altering quarterback? Sure. Do I want them to do that at the cost of the 2 picks they have now and next year or beyond? No.
If they get it right, it ain't going to matter.
But
Get
here's
it wrong, it'll kill you.
I was going to say, here's my thought in regards to that. I think they're going to take the swing. I'll buy that I think they're going to. I'll sell that I want them to.
Perfect.
Because I think the theory is Kwesi's going to say, I have to take this swing as you put it. And if it fails, I'm not going to be here anyway.
Yep.
We, the fans, are going to be left to lament it if it fails. He's going to be long gone.
It's the right coach. I mean, if you're going to make the swing, swing it with O'Connell.
All right, 1 down, 3 to go. Where are we going to next? All right, the NHL. This is a weird one because it feels like blasphemy, but I'm going with it anyway. The Minnesota Wild have been mathematically eliminated. The season is just about over. Buy or sell, you're going to be glad when it is.
I'm going to... this is going to be sort of buy.
Okay.
Because I really do want to see how these kids play in the last couple of games. So does it matter? No. But I really do want to see how they set up the lines, where the Ogren kid plays. And the new Russian kid and put him with Rossi and just see how that might look.
All right. So I'm going to sell, then I'm going to be glad, heavy on the air quotes, that it's over because playoff hockey's fun. We've gotten a taste of it for many years in a row. Not playoff success, mind you, but being in it is fun. Obviously, I wish they'd gotten in. But you ever been on a roller coaster and you enjoyed it for a while, but by the end you're so queasy that you're like, I just want to get off this thing? That was this season. Hey, they're coming around. Hey, they're taking a nosedive. Hey, they're coming around. It just let's be done with this. So many injuries, so many salaries, of course, so you have to, make up for. It sounds like there's going to be one more year of salary cap hell still.
Yep. But
so many what ifs. Let's just wipe the slate clean. Let's do this again October, November.
Also gives you a chance to cheer for Pionk and Sandberg and all those guys in the playoffs.
Sure does.
Now you can be a Winnipeg
Whether
fan.
I do it or not, we'll find out. But it sure gives me that opportunity.
All right.
2 down, 2 to go.
Yeah, we're going to go with Major League Baseball.
All right, Major League Baseball. I brought this up in the car to you, and I said I didn't want to spoil the segment, but the Twins need help in a myriad of ways. Carlos Correa just officially went on the IL this morning. But Louis Varland, as the kids say, ain't it so far. Buy or sell, you'd welcome Jake Odorizzi back to the Minnesota Twins.
Well, they have no depth. We've laughed for 2 years about the day they bring up Simeon Woods Richardson. That's today. So he was called up today. He's kind of taken Carlos's spot, and he's going to pitch. And I don't think you could. I mean, what's the harm? Go see if you can find a major league pitcher. We said this before the season. This was my prediction. Louis Varland, as a starter last year, had a 5.5 ERA. As a closer, he had a 0 whatever ERA. As a bullpen guy.
As a reliever, yeah. He's not going to close, but...
Why?
Yeah.
I mean, you've got that guy. You're going to run out and cross your fingers, but then you sell him as a 4-starter?
Right.
Bring Odorizzi in or who else did you say was out there? Keuchel.
Yeah.
Give one of the vet. Now, they might be awful, right? But give them a swing.
I'll buy it as well. And I know it goes against everything I said in the first segment because I said I'm so tired of pitching reclamation projects. I'm not sure this is one. Jake Odorizzi was a Twin not that long ago. It's not like he completely forgot how to play the game. It's not that guy. It's pretty brief history, if you will. Yeah. So I would take the shot, and I'm going to go with it for this reason. I hate this old adage, but it's true. You can't win a division in April, but you can lose your way out of it. And they're flirting with it right now. I know you are only 4-7. I know that means that there are 151 of these to go. But you were banking on the left side of your infield being a cornerstone of what you do. They're both on the shelf for a while.
They're broken. Yeah.
Right.
No, that's the problem. They're broken. Some
kind of move needs to happen. Is Jake Odorizzi going to be a game changer? Absolutely not. But you got to Band-Aid this team together in some way.
You have to stay afloat. I agree with you.
All right, so the NBA to finish it.
Yep.
Karl Anthony Towns returned last night. He is part of the Minnesota Timberwolves from here on out, barring another injury. Buy or sell, that excites you?
I'm going to buy because he makes them a deeper team. But boy, Nas has been good since Carl was out. So I'm going to buy that. I'm excited because they're an awful matchup for so many teams when he's in, and because he makes them deeper, right? But when he's out, we just don't have. I mean, you're going to throw Garza at people if he's out, and if he's in, Garza's going to be your last. He's going to be 5 fouls.
Right. So I'm going to buy, fully ready to have buyer's remorse because it just logically it should excite you because Cat is a very talented player. The statistics speak for itself, but too many times that's it. The statistics speak for itself. The eye test doesn't. But he'd had a very good season. He and Gobert together were working. But this team looked very good without him as well. It's not like they stumbled around 500 while he was out.
Yep.
They were playing darn near 600 basketball while he was out. How does he integrate into the rotation? How does he integrate into the way the ball moves when he's out on the floor? Now, mind you, a guy that can easily be a 20 and 10 on a nightly basis should excite you. But there's the life coach thing again. Are we going to get in the playoffs where he doesn't get a call? And I got news for all of us Timberwolves fans. In the playoffs, we're not going to get a call. It's already started a little bit. Yeah. It's almost like the league is tired of the hype behind the Thunder and the Wolves, and let's get the old guard back. When that happens, how's Cat going to react? So I'm not sure. But I'll buy that you basically just acquired an all-star, and that should be good.
Yeah, I agree. The question is, again, Nas has been unreal. And so if Cat does the behavioral issues, I don't think Finch is going to hesitate to take him out.
Well, that's the thing. Can the leash be that much shorter because you know what you have in Nas Reed? Yes. This is the deepest Timberwolves team we've had in a long time. I'm very leery of how they match up with anybody. The NBA should love the fact that you have one game left, everybody playing tomorrow. Nobody plays today, by the way. And you've got 3 teams at 56 and 25 battling for the top 3 seeds in the West. Adam Silver, congratulations. You couldn't draw this up any better.
Yep.
By the way, you might have a play-in tournament that starts with Warriors-Lakers as well. Don't tell me the NBA doesn't know what they're doing. We kind of know what we're doing. I just can't read a clock very well. We're way behind for the end of hour 1. Hour 2 starts next. Dave Hoops will get it going for us. The Northland Sports Page. We'll be right back.